Are you a tech healthy family? Do you even know what that means? Well, today I have the lovely guest, Heather, who's going to tell us all about herself in a moment to really help and support us. Because when children have technology, which is amazing, whose responsibility does it lie with? How do we look at addiction? We often band around the word addiction. And actually, are they addicted or have they not learned how to be responsible? Well, I am going to open up this whole conversation with our guest, Heather, today. So, welcome to the Resilient Kid podcast. Hi, Heather. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Totally welcome. I'm really excited about this conversation. We had a little bit at the start, and I can't wait for the audience to, because obviously I know quite a bit about you now, and we've met in a mutual business group, which is lovely. But I can't wait for the audience to hear what about. So tell us a little bit about what you do. And I've said a few controversial things there that I know parents often ask. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about tech healthy families, please.
Sure. I'm Heather, as you stated, and I I was a teacher for 21 years to let you know where this all began. And 12 of those years have been in international schools and highly resourced international schools. And my latest one was 3,000 students in a one-to-one device school. So kindergarten through grade 12, everyone had a device, whether it was the iPad or the laptop. Um, Along that journey, I was teaching grades 2 through 6, and I got heavily involved into the technology side of education. I became a digital learning leader. So I was helping roll out the iPads and the classroom management and coming up, with a scope and sequence of what are they supposed to learn each year when it comes to technology skills. And as we were doing this, I started to realize we're doing a lot of digital citizenship teaching. So cyberbullying and stranger danger and scam alerts and things like that, your digital footprint. But we were leaving out a really important part, which was digital wellness. So the habits that we form around our tech use in our productivity, our focus, our mental health and well-being. So I developed an after school program at our school, and I actually took that as a grade 3 to 5 program. And then I did a grade 6 to 8 program. Even though I wasn't teaching the middle school, it was something that everyone wanted to be a part of. So I opened it up to the higher grades. And what I learned is that kids want to talk, and they want to talk, they want to be heard, they don't want to be shut down. And if you can gain their trust in your conversations, they actually go a really long way to having the types of parental conversations we really want to have. So I decided after 21 years, we moved yet to another international location, and I left the classroom. And I'm now doing Tech Healthy Families full time to help more people around the world, not just my school.
And that is amazing. And there's a few things there that you've touched on. So I used to work in an international school, and yes, I love the way that you put it, heavily resourced, meaning usually private and often entitled, but not always. But you're right, the resources that often those international schools have. And as parents, we look for in, oh, do they all have an iPad? That's amazing. It's really interesting as parents when you look around, you want to see your school with lots of facilities, lots of resources like technology. So that was really interesting what you said there. And also, I think the other thing just to pick up is that one of our mottos here at the Resilient Kid is to not only meet children where they're at, or meet anybody, whether that's a parent, a teacher that we're supporting, meet them where they're at, but actually so that they feel seen and feel heard. And I think often technology can be a barrier to that for those children to be seen and be heard. So yeah, I really loved what you said about that.
Yeah, it is a place for voice. It is a place for learning. Um, it's kind of like we need to stop using screen time and reframe it more as screen purpose. If we talk to our kids about why are you getting online? What are you doing online? How can you use it to benefit yourself? I think the conversations would really change. And I know there's a lot around the ban and block and take phones away and, no screens until 16. Some are doing 18, phones out of schools and so forth. Where I come from, it's not necessarily you have to choose one or the other. I'm meeting you where you are. If you don't want them, you still need to teach your kids because they are going to get on them one day. Um, and the fact is, they might be on them and you don't know it. They're at a friend's house, they're using a friend's phone, they're still gathering around a device somewhere. Um, and you want to know that you've done what you can and have built that open and trusting relationship around these conversations. And if we demonize tech, then we have put a barrier between us. So I think it's really important to allow them a voice in this entire conversation. And unfortunately, I think the conversation has been dominated by adults and dominated by negative headlines. And so it's kind of taken away their voice, but also put a fear into parents.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things for me and that I get a lot is around that, you know, right, let's just stop, let's just ban them. And they're using them, like I always talk about natural consequences to a behavior. And if you've been on past, say, screen time or screen purpose, which I love that phrase, by the way, um, then yes, of course, I don't say, oh, just ban it. And lots of parents go, right, that's it. You're not having your iPad or you're not having your laptop or your phone for a month. Who's that going to punish? So I always go, well, let's make it relevant. Is it because quite often I'll find they've not done the homework, right? We're going to take your screen time off you. That's not even relevant to what they've done wrong. So yeah, I think that's really important. But for me, it's about, like you say, it's teaching responsibility around technology. I was going to show my age now, but I was 22 before I got a first mobile phone. And it was a phone. It didn't have this mini computer inside that we have now. Um, and so when suddenly we have all the social media and you're scrolling, as an adult, it's quite hard sometimes to stop ourselves, and be healthy in our technology use. And I love the phrase that you have used when I was kind of looking at your website and stuff is around um, being connected rather than just consuming. And it kind of brought to mind. So one of my children, and it is often the way, isn't it? How special I've got two teens. We send each other reels that are funny or things like that. And there was a very, should we say, very controversial American politician. We'll just put it like that. And uh, they sent me this reel and I said, I know that seems really funny, but I want you to have a look about what's behind that. Who is it that's talking about this person? Because although they're not my favorite person, who is it that's talking about them? What are their motives? What is it that they want from this? Do they just want clicks? Do they just want views? And is this true? Because if we're consuming this just because it's coming up and we're sharing this, and actually this is not true, then are we not just as bad as the person they're talking about? And he really is 15 and he was like, I hadn't thought of that. And I said, I want you to go back and have a look. And there was one about Taylor Swift and a controversial interviewer here was talking about Taylor Swift and saying she's done this, she's done that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, again, let's have a look at that. And it really, I think, made him double take because it's funny or because it's everybody's watching it, everybody's sharing it. And I said, is this what you want to be looking at? So yeah, we've got into that quite quickly, but what's your thoughts around that connected versus consuming?
You brought up a lot of really good things to address. I'll share I have a 20-year-old, almost 21, and then 18 and 17. So firstly, a lot of people say, well, what have you done yourself? And how do you know I've raised teens? So, it helps when you've been in the world because, just not students, but my own kids growing up. And I think it's one thing to have schools, again, who can teach the material, who have access to teaching the skills and so forth. But if you don't have that funding, you don't have those resources, what are you going to do? And I think parents just need to become more involved. But again, like you are, in a way that you're having an open conversation and it's in that trusted environment. So that's key because, I mean, think of something simple as your kid is a gamer. They've just won a game. They come downstairs and they're super excited to share with you that they won a game. A lot of adults are so far disconnected from it that they just say, okay, good, and go back to what they're doing. You've shot down something that's meaningful to them, but you've also stopped that line of communication around technology. So the fact that you had that moment with your child is exactly what we want to happen. And we need to not rely on school to be doing the teaching. We need to get parents just as educated so that they can have these conversations and feel that they're empowered enough to have them. Because that's the other thing. When I talk to parent communities, the number of parents that come to me and say, I don't feel like I know enough, or my child knows more than me, it's not true. I hate the term digital native, and you see that a lot. Our kids are not digital natives. They have grown up alongside technology, but they do not understand the consequences, the interactions, the developments, the algorithms. They don't understand all the things that come along with the technology. And when you talk about someone being a native, you're assuming they know everything about it and can do it. So media literacy is crucial right now. And you talk about the reels that were shared. I have the same thing happening in my family. Lots of families are dealing with, whether it's war, politics, influencers, whatever is out there, it's bombarding them in their life. So teaching these media literacy skills, it's, stop and reflect. Who made it? What was their goal in making it? Is it clickbait? Is it a verified source? Look at reverse image search. That's a huge one. Is it AI generated? That's going to be a really big one to stay on top of now. But having these conversations of just stop and pause, reflect on what you're consuming, and especially before sending, resharing, posting. And I think that's one thing that a lot of kids don't take the time to do. They get excited and push reshare or send or forward. And so the more we can have these conversations about really the consequences, because I can say from doing all these middle school courses with these kids, they want to hear the realities. They want to hear the facts. They just don't want to be talked down to. They want to understand, okay, well, what's the impact? What's going to happen? What's the consequence? They're not out there to be hurtful. They're just believing what they're seeing and sharing. So we really do need to come at this from a place of the more open and conversational we can be, the better communication you're going to have, and they will keep coming to you. And that's what we want.
Absolutely. And I really, well, there's a couple of things that you said there that I think is really important to kind of just unpick a little bit. You talked about reverse imaging. So in a second, I'd like you to just talk about that, as in, what is it? Because some people listening to this won't know that. And you're absolutely right with, is it AI generated and things like that? And I think for me as a therapist, a lot of, especially in the teen world, a lot of anxiety is coming from the kind of messages, the kind of influences they're following, the whether it's body comparison, whether they're not, their self-esteem is not there. But I think you're absolutely right about keeping that communication open, because I hadn't thought about digital natives in that way before. But like me, I know life before this kind of technology. And so I also know the consequences of it quite quickly, whereas our children don't, because computers have been around all of their lifetime. Phones have been around for all of their lifetime. And I remember talking to, again, one of my kids who is a budding actor. He wants to be an actor when he's older. And he came home and we was just talking about technology and messages that were flying through friendship groups, WhatsApp groups, things like that. And there were some pictures shared of a friend. And as you can imagine, these pictures didn't have a lot of clothing on. And we talked about it at the dinner table. And and he was very upset for this friend whose picture thought that was just going to another friend who was keeping it safe. And obviously somebody's got hold of it. And that's how it happens very easily. And that's a digital footprint that's out there now. And we talked about it and I said, can you imagine if that happens to you? And he said, yeah, but you wouldn't be really mad at me, would you? And I said, it's not about me being mad. I said, it's about, say you become this famous actor that you want to be. That will surface. At some point, a picture like that will surface. You can 100% guarantee it. And he was like, oh, but I wouldn't do that. And I said, I know you wouldn't, but that's because you're aware that when it goes out there, it's not safe. It's not safe. It's not kept by that person. So yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that they don't realize the consequences until they've heard a story of a friend it happening to, or that you've had those open and honest conversations. So I think for me, that's why the work that you do is so important. Because I don't think as adults, we understand the responsibility or fully explaining that to our kids sometimes, unless something happens. But yeah, I just wanted to, will you just explain kind of that reverse imaging? Because I think that's quite interesting for parents to understand.
Sure. Real quickly to talk about your images that stay online, a quick activity your audience can do. I did it in my classroom. I would Google in front of them my name and just hope and pray. Not that I do anything bad, but I would Google my name and we would go into the images and they would see all of these images of me and my kids and in all these locations and so forth. And they're like, why are you on Google? So I think a lot of our kids also think this is a celebrity thing or a high profile thing. It's not going to happen to like your everyday neighbor that their images stay online. So I had to explain to them that I used to be a travel blogger for many, many years. So my kids' pictures are out there. The travel blog owned the images, so I can't take them down. So it was a really good lesson for them to understand. And it's something, your audience can do very quickly with their own kids and just pick some people and see what's out there on them, but show that, it's not just celebrities and famous people where things stick around. And talking about the images, reverse image search. This is a key thing. A lot of kids will believe a lot of clickbaity type sites and headlines. And so if they see images and they're really questioning, is this real? One thing you can do is Google has a reverse image search. So if you just go to Google and say reverse image search, you can take that photo that was in that you're questioning, whatever article it was, you can put it into reverse image search and it will then show you all the places that photo has been seen. And it will show you the websites and so forth. So then you can start to say, oh, well, okay, well, this isn't their actual image. They made a story off of this image, but this image is probably a stock photo from somewhere else. But it's a really useful tool for our kids, especially when things look sensationalized. Again, teaching kids how to read headlines and what clickbait looks like. That's another media literacy skill that's essential for them because they're very quick to believe what they see. Our kids are impressionable. They're still developing. That frontal lobe is not there. We're talking about how we understand technology and how to use it because we've had all of these years of experience. We've also had life experience and regular media literacy. Now we're digital literacy. And they don't have all that behind them yet. So that's why it's even more important to be teaching them. And they're going to mess up. I'm very honest about that. They are going to mess up, but they learn when they mess up, especially if they feel like they have a safe place with you to have those conversations. It's okay to mess up. As long as we're, modeling and nurturing and helping them, but to block everything from them and keep everything away from them and maybe even not even talking to them about it all, what's going to happen when they do get online? Because they will get online and you just don't want it to be behind your back. You want to have a say-so, you want to have a part of the journey with them to at least make you feel like you've done what you can to help them be prepared because the companies aren't, the platforms aren't, they want to make the money. So we need to be more involved in what they're doing and educating in things like this reverse media search and looking at images and so forth.
You're so right. I think it's really important. And I talk a lot about brain development, not only with the students that I work with, but with the parents. And we know that, for girls it's early 20s, for boys it's later, and that where they're making those wise decisions, that emotional regulation is just not developed yet. And we're filling it with the stuff that we consume. Um, Heather, what do you think? There's a couple of things, and I know you've got some top tips for us, which we're going to kind of end with. But I've heard you talk a little bit about banding around this word addiction when we come to technology. Tell us a little bit about that. I love your thoughts on it, and I think it'd be really good to share with the audience.
Um, I have a really hard time with the word addiction in the way that it's being used, I think, in general media right now. Addiction is something to be taken seriously. It is something that is life changing, um, behavior changing, daily impact on being able to do or not do certain things. It's incapacitating, in a sense. So I think we've gotten to this point where we're throwing around the word addiction. Even kids are saying it to each other, you're so addicted. Or parents are throwing it out as they're walking by their child on the iPad or a gaming console, you're so addicted. I think we have to be very careful and very mindful how we're using that because it is damaging. Um, they are immersed in a world they love. They are doing something that they're enjoying. We hope that they're being productive versus passive when they're on it so that they're actually engaging um, a multiplayer game where they're talking and helping each other out with strategy versus just sitting there mindlessly tapping on a game. Um, you know, be careful because you don't know. I used to think that my son was wasting time online when I would see him sitting. And this was probably when he was about 12. And he's now 20. And I have so many apologies to make to him because I didn't take the time at that time to really stop and look at what he was doing. I just saw him on his screen and I thought he was wasting time. You're always on it, you're wasting time. It turns out when we finally had a conversation about it, he loves watching YouTube videos about science. So a lot of the time, yes, he was consuming, but he was consuming something I didn't even realize that he was so interested in. So I think unless you really know your child and what they're doing online, you see their patterns or activities they're doing, be careful using the word addiction. And we can talk about what are you doing? Just find out what they're doing. How much time are you spending on it? Have you done the other tasks that you're supposed to be doing, like your homework? Have you eaten today? Have you done the household chores or fed the dog or whatever it is? But if the phone use is actually getting in the way of other duties, homework, school, you're seeing a major shift in mood, not eating, sleep, and so forth, then you talk about it in a different direction and you get someone, an expert involved, medical expert. But I think we just have to be careful with the word addiction.
Absolutely. And I think you're so right. It's funny, isn't it, as well, because I Fortnite, as we know, is a huge global phenomenon, really. And my youngest was 13 before we allowed him to have it. Now, most of his friends have been having it at primary. And being, you don't always want to be the son or daughter of a therapist, I'm going to be honest. But we had very frank conversations with the reasons why we didn't want him on it. And for that, because, we felt like it was very much, it's just going to be playing and for hours and everything else gets put to one side and things like that. And he actually did a PowerPoint presentation about the pros and cons of having it. And do you know, at the end, I just went, absolutely. You have thought this through. And it's not that I suddenly thought Fortnite is the best thing ever. It was that you really thought the pros and cons of this. And that if I ask you to come off, you're going to come off. And actually, I come in sometimes and it could be a weekend and he's got his phone on and he's talking to his friend over the phone and they're playing online at the same time and they're chatting and I can hear them laughing and they always, shout out, "Hi, Ashley, how are you?" And it's just so beautiful. So we don't want to take that kind of, those connections away. We don't want to, suddenly pull the rug from them at all. I think you're really right. It's about, I guess, teaching that responsibility around this is not the be all and end all, even though sometimes it feels like it is for them. But actually, my eldest is going through mock exams this week, and she has actively put her phone outside of a room because we've encouraged her to, not because she suddenly thought, "Oh, I won't have my phone." I've said to her, "What do you need to get done in the next few hours?" And she's gone, "I need to study law, this particular part of law." So I said, "Okay, how are you going to do that if friends are texting, etc.?" And she said, "Do you know what? That's a really good idea. I'm going to put it out of the room and just see." Now, I said, if you just do it for an hour and see how you feel, 3 hours later, she goes back and she's got like 56 notifications, blah, blah, blah. And that's okay because now she's on a break, but she feels so productive and the phone now feels like a treat. So, I think you're right with that. We have to really think about our responsibility, not just expecting they'll know how to manage this, big responsibility.
Yeah. Teaching tiny habits, small habits around phone use, just like you said, put it outside and just try. Um, we know that the mere presence of a phone causes distraction and we're not as fully focused and engaged on what we're doing. So the mere presence, for those of you that don't know, your phone is maybe next to you and you put it face down thinking that's going to help. But the mere presence of it, the fact that you know it's there is still drawing your attention away. And I think a lot of schools, that's what they're trying to fight against right now is it wasn't enough to have phones in backpacks or phones in lockers because they know that they're wondering what's missing. It's a very real thing. But if you can start building these tiny habits like you've started with your daughter, just put it outside the room and see what you can accomplish. And then to get gratification from it is a really big thing. Will they mess up? Sure. Will they want it in the beginning? Sure. Is change hard? Absolutely. But, keep practicing, keep doing it. And as long as you have support and as long as you have that open communication where they feel like, "Oh, I'm so frustrated. I just want to tell you how frustrated I am." It's okay. Let them say that. As long as you're there to help them and work through it, it's going to be so much better. My kids had I have 0 notifications on my phone. I don't have vibrations, badges, alerts, nothing. Um, and my kids, they've learned that that's something that just sets me off. Because if we're watching a show together, a movie together, playing a game together, and their phones are vibrating against the couch or the chair or the pocket, it does this to me. It just, and they've learned that. So they have become so much more conscious that around me, they try to remember to turn them off. And the first one that happens, they'll go, "Oh, sorry," and they'll turn it off because they know it's a respect thing. So I think that's something else that we can work on together. Like, what are the norms or the values that you want to have in the settings when you are together um, that are really important? But have those conversations. It's not like I came down on them and said, "Turn them off. You're not allowed. Put them away. Put them." It was just, "Can you just respect this boundary here? Just have them off." Um, so I think, yeah, as long as we can keep nurturing them towards those positive digital habits, that's where we're going to see the most growth versus constantly condemning something that they like.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm 100% with you there on the notifications, by the way. But yeah, because I often, so we all have iPhones. I can see my children's screen time and we will often have a conversation. Now, I don't come down on them and go, "You've been on." What I'll say is, "This is your screen time this week. How's that?" Like literally just lay at their door. And they'll go, "Oh my God, was it?" And it's that realization that it was high, if we've been on half term or things like that. And I'll say, "Okay, so what do we want to do? Like, what are you going to do about that?" "Well, actually, I'm going to cut that down an hour a day, or I'm going to, but just making them aware. It's not me telling them off or shouting at them, or it is just literally making them aware because also I'm very honest with them and I'll go, "Look at mine." And I use my phone for work, but I will say to them, actually, I've been on Insta a lot this today, so I know my habits are honest and open conversation because I'm human, because sometimes you do want to just scroll because you want to switch off from something, but actually it's making that choice about doing that rather than just, I guess what you're saying is rather than just scroll, scroll, scroll because it is now a habit. Um, Heather, you had some really good kind of top tips for us, which I have got written in front of me, by the way, in case you've forgotten that you wrote down. I know that the first one was make it a conversation, not a rule. Kind of tell us a little bit more about that because I thought it was fascinating.
So I really, again, you use words to get parents' attention, words that are out there in common media, right? So everyone's using the word rules. I personally don't like the word rules. That's not going to get you anywhere if you sit down with a kid and say, okay, here's the rules. They're going to turn off. So you need buy-in, and buy-in is more about agreements and making them together as a family. So instead of printing something out that you find online that has a set list of rules that you're not allowed to change, number one, you don't know if that's going to work for your family. You don't know if that's going to meet the needs of where they are. Um, you need something that's fluid and adjustable, but created by your family. So if you're going to make them, I call them agreements. You can call it a charter, a pledge, a family pledge. But agreements you need to do together, especially if they're in that tween teen years. Because like I said, they're developing their autonomy. And part of that is agency, which means they want to have a voice. They want to be a part of the conversation. They want to be heard. And if you silence it, you're not going to get the buy-in. You've closed the conversation and you've formed a lack of trust. So I really think you need to come at it from a family conversation, discuss what they want, what they feel that they need and why, discuss what you want, what you feel you need and why. And then it becomes a lesson in compromise and thinking about, okay, what are our family values and goals overall? And then you craft it from there, but really make it a conversation and not a set of rules.
Yeah, love that one. Love that top tip. So the second one you said is pause before posting.
So pause before posting comes back to that media literacy. And we are reactionary people, even adults, and we are keyboard warriors in the worst of times. And I think we need reminders that we need to pause before we post. And post doesn't even mean just coming up with something on your own. It means resharing, forwarding, whatever that is. I think when you're reactionary, you're instinctive to share it because you're mad. And that's going to get you more often than not into trouble. You're going to have done something you wish you didn't. And I think that's where a lot of kids, because, that frontal lobe, they're not thinking of what's going to happen down the road. They're thinking right now in the moment. They're not thinking about the consequences. How am I feeling? And it's very egocentric. How am I feeling? So teaching the skill of pausing, even just, okay, I saw it, I'm angry or whatever it is, or even if it's just fake news, I'm not sure what it is, go somewhere else, go to a different screen, a different account, go look at other stuff while your brain just takes a moment to either dismiss it or if it's still on your mind, check it. So go check it before you're going to share it. But I don't think we pause enough and haven't taught our kids how to pause.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes one of the things that I think is when I'm actually looking at stuff, am I that bothered about this? Like, is this affecting me at all? Am I, because I always find it amazing that, some people will just put nasty comments underneath and it's like, it's nothing to do with you. You're not interested in it clearly. Why would you do that? But there are people out there that just do that. So I kind of just think, does it really affect me? As in, not that I would be putting nasty comments out there, but like, am I going to reshare this? What's the purpose of resharing this? And so, yeah, I think teaching our kids and ourselves to just pause before we either share or post or, yeah, because as we know, you can't take it back once it's there. You can delete it, but somebody's caught it somewhere. So, yeah, absolutely. And then your third top tip was Model the habits you want to see. I love that.
So I think this one's kind of a gray area for people because a lot of people are saying they'll do what they see. I believe that to a point, right? I think kids need to just try things in general for them to learn. So it's not that if you set this perfect example, that they're going to be a perfect example. They're going to challenge things, they're going to question things, they're going to try things, and they may stumble several times on those things. But if you can be realistic and think as a parent, okay, I'm going to try to do what I can to model what I'd like to see. So, for example, if you're on your phone and you're doing whatever you're doing on your phone and your child walks into the room, just simply putting it down, looking them in the eye and saying hi or hey, what do you need? Because often what we do is we're on the phone and it's kind of a hey, what do you need? So, modeling the fact that eye contact is deserved and that moment of talking is deserved. Um, Another one that's an example of this, of modeling, is the word fubbing. So, fubbing is when you're in a face to face conversation and your phone may get a notification and you pick up your phone and start looking at it while you're in a conversation. So, you've just dismissed the other person, and the brain actually registers that as pain and I'm not important in this moment. So, modeling things like that. If you're in a conversation with your child, if your phone notification goes off, it's okay. Let it go off and finish the conversation you're having, because the kids are doing it to each other constantly. And the kids are doing it in general with adults. So we do need to model some things, but not expect they're going to be perfect. They need time, they need practice, and they need to come to these realizations. But as long as we're continually showing them and having these conversations, they're going to get there.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it kind of links really nicely to what you were saying about agreement. So, one agreement that we have in our household is that we don't have phones at the table. So, you might have them in your pocket or whatever, but nobody checks their phones. And just to add on, because I'm like a big believer as well, that if you're in the middle of something, like in the middle of an email or, you're on, my kids know that just wait a second because you are really important, but I have to just finish this. So they've still got that delayed gratification, but that they'll know that, you know, this is going to take me 2 minutes to finish. I'm going to put it down and you have got my full on eye contact and attention and stuff like that. So I think, it's really important. It's not about just putting your phone down immediately and going, oh, what do you need? If you're scrolling, of course, like, because you don't need to be doing that. But I think, know them understanding that things like not having it at the table, not having it in a restaurant, not checking it halfway through a conversation. Never heard that phrase before, fubbing. I love it. Um, and we're going to send out like a little newsletter. So I'll highlight some of the stuff that we've talked about. And I'll put that definition in because I think it's brilliant. But yeah, I hadn't realized that's what it's called. But you do see that a lot, where you'll be having, and it can be professionals as well. I've done it when I've been in a meeting and somebody's checked the phone and I've gone, what? Like, what are you doing? And I noticed that abroad more than here. And it was funny because my hubby is an architect and we used to live in Abu Dhabi. And he said, everybody picks the phones up in the middle of a meeting. And I was like, that's so rude. And you're right. You feel dismissed. You feel like you're not respected. You're not heard. You're not seen, as we started talking the conversation at the top of the podcast. So yeah, for us to do that in front of our kids or to our kids, that's harsh, isn't it? So yeah, okay. I love those. I love those top tips. Heather, I cannot tell you what a wealth of information this has been for our audience. And I know that we'll probably get some questions and stuff. So if it's okay with you, when it goes out on the newsletter or the podcast, if there is any questions, I'll forward them to you. So you could, if that's okay, you can answer them. But also tell us a little bit now, it will be all in the show notes. So don't worry about like kind of, writing it down as Heather says it. But Heather, where can we find you? Because I know from often at the end of the podcast, we go, right, where is she? Because I need to follow this person. So tell us, where can we find you?
You can find me at techhealthyfamilies.com, and the same for Instagram at techhealthyfamilies. Those are where most of my information is shared, and you can find all the resources that I have for you and your family.
Brilliant. And there is some lovely resources there that I've looked up today ahead of the interview with Heather. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you think that we've missed, or anything else that you wanted to say to the audience before we finish today?
Such a pleasure being here. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time and space to talk about tech in a healthy and positive way and not have a conversation just end in negativity in tech. My one thing I'd say is get those conversations going. It's never too late. You don't have to be, as the kids would say, cringy about it. You can just have normal adult conversations with your kids, and just find entry points that you think that they would enjoy, such as what's your favorite app, what's the game you're playing, and how do you play it.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. Just take an interest and open those conversations. Um, Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been myself, Ashley Costello at The Resilient Kid, and also Heather from Tech Healthy Families. Check out the show notes so that you can follow. Please go follow Heather. She's got a wealth of information on her Instagram and also a website. Heather, thank you so much. You have been brilliant today.
Thank you so much.